drag queen Van Bookstoria. I want to thank Jane Manning Hyatt for all of the treats in the back. Please avail yourself to those. To Ethan, who is running our live stream right now. Hello out there in Facebook and YouTube land and wherever else we're broadcasting. A special thanks to Jess Churchill, Amy Ovalle, Cindy Carroll, and Sarah Anderson, who will be circulating some sign-in sheets. And would you just please, if you're in the database already, just sign your name. It's fine. But if you're not, we would love to include you the next time we have an event like this. This allows us to notify you. I want to point out first, just to welcome our guests. So first, who is here in this church for the first time? Yay! Who is here who hasn't been to church in a long time? Welcome, welcome. Glad you're here. You get free t-shirts. Just tell them Victor said you get free t-shirts. Are there queer families here to welcome? Welcome. Yes, it's beautiful. And queer people who have braved the church. Yes, thank you. Yes, all right. And how about straight allies? Yes, all right. Yes, beautiful. So, straight allies and all of us, but mostly straight allies, you are how change happens. It is on your compassion that all of this depends, that equality depends. I want to welcome and point out a few individuals. Becca Robbins, over at the table, right there. Becca is here from Books Not Bans, which is a nonprofit that sends LGBT-themed books to community groups around the country, especially in hostile areas, because queer narratives are for everyone. Is Velma Garcia here? She told me she was coming. Okay. Lynn Gerber. Oh. Lynn Gerber is here, yes. Lynn Gerber is from MCC San Francisco. Can I say that? Yeah, sure. And where I used to be the pastor, and until I came to Calvary. And Lynn is a scholar in the best, most wonderful sense of the term. She has spent over a decade pouring through recordings of worship services from Metropolitan Community Church of San Francisco, which was the second queer welcoming church in the world, back in 1968. She has focused her research on the worst years of the AIDS pandemic, and what she uncovered is so beautiful and so powerful. She's turned it into a podcast called When We All Get to Heaven. What a day of rejoicing that will be. And it sent me into a crying jag just listening to the promo for it, and I hope you will give it a listen. And Lynn has little cards to give out about when we all get to heaven.
Come get one.
Yeah. I want to introduce Laurel McCall. Laurel is here from to your right. Laurel's here from Green Apple Books, and we'll be selling the Hoffman books. And now on the stage, I would like to introduce Sarah and Ian Hoffman. So glad you're here. They would not be here without Susie Williams, who hooked us up. Sarah and Ian are the authors of Jacob's New Dress, Jacob's Room to Choose, Jacob's School Play, starring He, She, and They, made famous at Calvary just moments ago, and Jacob's Missing Book. Their books have won numerous awards, and they are number 72 on the ALA's list of the top banned books of the decade. Yes. They have been working to make the world a better place for over 25 years, and they are part of a group of authors whose books are targeted by the recent Supreme Court case you will be hearing more about in a bit. Please welcome Sarah and Ian Hoffman. So, just a quick question. Why drag at church? Somebody asked me this week, and I came up with some reasons. Number 5, because tolerance is not enough. Number 4, because Jesus sought out people who were targeted by religious authorities and the empire. Number 3, because Jesus hung out with those people and got into good trouble. Number 2, because Calvary is a congregation that follows Jesus in 2025. Number 1, because in the Bible, gender is a fluid spectrum. And let me tell you something, in the Christian Century, that old conservative magazine that we all know, beautiful work that they have done forever, but in the most recent edition, there is a beautiful article on gender fluidity in the Hebrew Bible, and I've made some copies, and they're over there on the table if you want to take one. It is, that it's in the Christian Century is news, but that it's done this well is just, I can die, okay? Now, the most supreme reason for Dragon Church is Sister Roma. Roma was born in conservative German Reform Grand Rapids, the internet, and she graduated from St. Thomas Aquinas College, yes, with a BA/BS. I did not know there was a Barbra Streisand degree. Yes. She's more than a glamazon with a habit. She's the most photographed nun on earth. She's raised millions of dollars for people living with HIV/AIDS, and I'm one. Roma was the evening hostess for this final year of the AIDS life cycle ride from San Francisco to Los Angeles that raised $17.5 million. And separately, Roma and the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, we have Sister Trudy is here also, yes, out of habit, yes. They have raised millions for people living with HIV and AIDS. So please, if you go near Sister Roma, mind your wallet.
And your jewelry.
Yeah. She put the drag and drag queen band book story hour. Please welcome Sister Roma.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here on this beautiful day in your gorgeous, gorgeous church and community. I felt so welcome already. You're just amazing. I just want to point out how connected we all are. I actually met Sarah and Ian at Becca's band book event at Fabulous Books in the Castro.
It does that.
Which I... Maybe if I don't touch it. Which I hosted that event for Becca at Fabulous Books, and then I went to the book release at Apple Books, and I read this book for the crowd there. So I fell in love with Sarah and Ian immediately, and this entire series of books. The very fact that that it's so controversial that there's someone sitting here in drag reading a banned book is mind-boggling, but the entire world is mind-boggling right now. I mean, we live in a world where diversity, equity, and inclusion are dirty words all of a sudden, and it's scary. It's scary for a lot of people. The recent Supreme Court decision banning gender-affirming care and health care for trans youth is shocking and deplorable. And we have to pray, of course, for all of the people who are suffering the ravages of war from Gaza to Ukraine to Iran, and people right here at home who are struggling. The world is in turmoil, and it can be very daunting. It's very easy to sit and just doom scroll and wonder, what is it all about? What are we going to do? What can I do? Well, I'll tell you what I've seen. I have seen, as Victor pointed out, 2,500 people ride their bicycles 545 miles in community to raise $17 million for important life-saving permanent services for the Los Angeles LGBT Center and the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. I marched with about 100,000 other people from San Francisco and the Bay Area in the No Kings March, which actually reaffirmed my faith in humanity and made me so proud to live here. Friday night, I hosted the Castro Night Market, which when we saw probably several thousand people in the Castro celebrating and enjoying life. And I continue to look around and see our community and most importantly, our allies support ourselves. And basically, we're living our lives authentically and pretty much unbothered. Yes, of course, we're emotionally connected, we're paying attention, we're concerned, we're worried, but at the same time, we're continuing to do what we do. We are living with joy, we are supporting each other, we are holding the most vulnerable dear and close to our hearts. And it makes me so proud to live in San Francisco and to be part of this community. So thank you all for being here and not letting anyone squash your joy, because that's what pisses them off the most. And I'm so joyful, I'm obnoxious, I shoot rainbows out of my butt. How about that? So I don't do Drag Queen Story Hour. Some people have asked me about that, and I don't really like kids. So, no. I'm just not part of that. But what I do is I support important causes and the things that I believe in and people that I love. And that's why I am here today. So I'm going to read this book to you, and I hope I can do it well. We'll see. I do know how to read, so don't worry. And are we going to have slides of each page? Is that what's happening up here?
That's what we're going to do.
Awesome! So I don't have to, Shall we start? Yes. Jacob's Missing Book by Sarah and Ian Hoffman, illustrated by Chris Case. Jacob looked for the penguin book, but it wasn't on the shelf, so he went to the librarian's desk. Mrs. Tolson, the penguin book is missing, said Jacob. Mrs. Tolson frowned. Yes, it is. She reached for a book on the library cart. Try this book about bats, Jacob. I think you'll enjoy it. Jacob made room on his bed for his mom, so his mom could snuggle in next to him. What should we read tonight? Asked Jacob's mom. Do you have readers? It's the black text on lavender. Very difficult to read. I have this weird curse where I look fabulous in every pair of glasses. Isn't it wild? It makes it really hard to go to the sunglass hut because I'm like, I'll take them off! Oh yeah, this is much better. Jacob made room on his bed so his mom could snuggle in next to him. What should we read tonight? Asked Jacob's mom. The penguin book, said Jacob. Good choice, said Jacob's mom. She slid the book from the lopsided pile next to Jacob's bed. I tried to read it during library time, said Jacob, but it was missing. That happens, said Jacob's mom. Good thing we have a copy at home. Jacob fell asleep, snuggling his pretend feathers deep in his nest. I love feathers. Carrots for dessert, Emily shook her head. Papa always gets it wrong. It's better when Dad makes lunch. My mom does that, said Noah. I tell her, carrots are not dessert. Not agree more. Who are Papa and Dad? Asked Sophie. My dad, said Emily. You have two dads? Asked Noah. Just like in the penguin book, said Jacob. Emily nodded. Papa and Dad read that book to me. My grandma even gave me a penguin stuffy. What's the penguin book? Asked Noah. It's so great, said Sophie. I'll show you in the library. It's not in the library, said Jacob. It's missing. Jacob raised his hand. Miss Reeves, Miss Reeves. Miss Reeves smiled as she crossed the room. Hello, Blue Table, she said. Hello, Jacob. How can I help you? Noah's never read the penguin book, said Jacob. Miss Tolson says it's missing. Can you ask her to give it to you when she finds it? And then you can read it to us for story time. Ms. Reeves opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She closed her mouth, took a deep breath, and let it out slowly. We're not going to be able to read that book in class anymore, she said. Why? Asked Jacob. Ms. Reeves pulled a chair over the kids' table and sat down. Some people are unhappy with the books we have in our library and our classrooms, said Ms. Reeves. While the school is trying to figure that out, some of the books have been taken away. The Penguin book is one of them. But what's wrong with the Penguin book? Asked Emily. I'm sorry, but I can't say any more, said Ms. Reeves. My mom says some people don't like the book because the penguins are both dads, said Jacob. Emily shot out of her seat. She leaned across the table and stared at Jacob. What's wrong with having two dads? She said. Nothing, said Ms. Reeves. She placed her hand over Emily's. There is nothing wrong with having two dads. Jacob looked at their hands together. He reached across the table and placed his hand over Emily's too. Emily sat back down. Emily, would you share one of your carrots with me? Sighed Miss Reeves. I could use a treat right now. At recess, Emily hung upside down and looked at Jacob. I can't believe they took away the Penguin book, she said. Sophie climbed up, then flipped upside down next to Emily. It's weird, said Sophie. Noah's head appeared at the top of the slide. Hey, he said, what is the Penguin book about? We'll show you, said Jacob. Let's play Penguin. The kids ran around the playground, gathering rocks for a nest. Sophie found the perfect rock for a penguin egg. Now we sit on the egg and hatch the baby penguin, explained Jacob. I'll be the first dad. I'll be the second, said Sophie. Then you need to take care of the baby penguin until it grows up, said Jacob. My dad say babies are hard work, said Emily, but that I was worth it. Should I get us some fish? Asked Sophie. The sandbox could be the ocean, said Jacob. Be right back, said Sophie, waddling away. I want to be the baby penguin when it hatches, said Emily. No, I want to be the baby penguin, said Noah. I'm the one with two dads, said Emily. Okay, grumbled Noah. But I got to be the baby penguin next time. The rest of Ms. Reeves' class wanted to play too. Soon there were penguin nests all over the playground. When the bell rang, many happy penguins waddled back to class. I see you picked the Penguin book again, said Jacob's mom as she settled onto his bed. We played penguins at school, said Jacob, and hatched eggs. That is delightful, said Jacob's mom. We had to explain the story to Noah because they took the book away from school, said Jacob. Emily is really sad the book's gone. Jacob's mom sighed. I bet she is. Mom, do you think the school can get the Penguin book back? Asked Jacob. I don't know, said Jacob's mom. She kissed him on top of his head. We can try. Okay, smiled Jacob. Now read. So relatable to so many people. The story is told in a voice that I mean, I have questions that you sent me, but I need to know, how did you decide to write this book?
Good question.
Start.
You want to start?
I'll start.
Oh,
So our books, we'll get to this later, but we have other books, and they're all banned in about 26 states at this point. And so we track our bans because we get our Google alerts like all good authors do. And a little closer, okay. And we were kind of a little bit in despair with the fact that our books were disappearing from schools and libraries across the country. And became funnier, we started to write it down, and then that became this book. You know, we're authors, and we realized that our contribution to this moment is to write books.
And thank you for that beautiful reading. I cried at the same point when we read it yesterday in a different church.
Yeah, it's such an emotional story, and you managed to remain somehow sort of neutral, almost. I get the opinion that Ms. Reeves, the teacher, is not in favor of removing that book, and his mother obviously is also pissed about it. But like, how did you maintain like the civility? Because some people probably would have had a different tone when they came to writing that book.
Yeah, there's a lot of behind the scenes cursing, but we try and keep that out of it. And we wanted to represent for the adults reading it, that for the teachers and the parents and for librarians and other adults involved, this is a terrible situation about which they can say very little because it's baffling. But not saddle the kids down with that, except to the extent that kids notice when we hesitate and say, can I have a carrot? You know, because they don't, you know, there's nothing to be said right now. But we wanted to focus the story on the kids' experience and how kids can come up with their own solutions to adult-created problems, even if they don't understand them, or, you know, we don't understand them.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful way that they did that. The idea to have them play penguins and basically act out the book. Are you familiar with the penguin books?
Yes.
Of course, right. Would you like to briefly describe it to people who don't know?
For those of you who haven't read it, the book we're referring to is And Tango Makes Three by Justin Richardson and Peter Cornell. And it's a true story of two penguins in the Central Park Zoo named Roy and Silo. And Roy and Silo were a couple. And they noticed all the other penguin couples sitting on their eggs in a nest. And so they made a nest of rocks. They didn't have an egg. So they rolled a rock in and they sat on that. And that didn't work. So zookeepers noticed what was going on, and when another penguin couple abandoned an egg, because sometimes penguins lay two and they can only care for one, they took the egg and they gave it to Roy and Silo, who hatched it. And that baby became Tango, because they say in the book, it takes two to make a tango. And this book was a huge favorite in our household. Our daughter Ruby, who's here with us today, I don't know, maybe it's still your favorite book, but she's 20 now. So she's spent her whole childhood asking us to read this book, and there's penguin art projects all over our house, and there were penguin book reports as she got older, and it was a very important book in our house. And it's also beautifully written, so if you haven't read it, it's worth reading.
So one of the other important aspects of Tango Makes Three is it's one of the top 10 most banned books in the United States, despite being nonfiction and about penguins. So anytime we saw that one of our books was being banned, we knew that Tango was being banned too, in that whatever school district that was. So not only did we love the book, but we felt a real sense like we were comrades in it.
So beautiful. And I can only imagine, are there any educators or teachers here? I met a principal out there earlier. Sister Tootie is a teacher. Yes, thank you for your service, but also I can only imagine the frustration that you would feel having literally having your tongue tied, your hands tied, being told certain things that you can and cannot teach, but it's such an important story to share. You just want people to feel included. Was there a personal reason? Do you have members in your family who identify as trans?
Good question. Not as trans per se, however, our son, Sam, who's now 23, when he was 2 years old, he wanted everything pink in the world. He wanted to wear a dress, he wanted to wear pink shirts and have long hair, and wear tutus and take dance class, and he would have been so enamored with you. And if I could take a moment...
Probably.
One of the things I love about Roma is she's so modest. So I just want to take a moment to call out our son's preschool teacher from when he was 2, Sandra. She was his first accepting teacher. In the same room at the same school, there was another teacher who did not believe that boys should do girl things, as she said, and she made that very clear. Now, he was 2 and a little bit oblivious to that, but as he got older, he certainly had people telling him he shouldn't do the things he wanted to do. And so when he was 4, unfortunately not in Sandra's classroom anymore, although he did have lovely teachers, but he had kids telling him, you can't be a boy and wear a dress. Oh, actually, cute story. So he's 4, he wants to wear a dress, and we were worried about him. So we gave him little things he could say, like, don't tease me, or just say no. Because we thought it might be hard to come up with something to say in that moment. Go get a teacher. And he came home from his first day of wearing a dress, and we said, how did it go? And he said, it was great. And we said, did anyone tease you? And he said, yeah. I said, well, what did you say? He said, I told them I can be a boy and wear a dress because it is my choice.
Well, that speaks volumes about your parenting.
No,
So
just
that's
about,
beautiful.
just about.
But also, you know what? Kids are smart. People do not give kids enough credit. Of course he noticed the book is missing. Of course they have questions. And of course they recognize the reason behind it. And you didn't have to, you don't want to sit down with a child and say, well, you know, some people are, you know, you have to, you know, but you, the way that you covered it in the book is so appropriate for children. And I think, I imagine that it reflects what actually goes on in many situations. It's beautiful. Why do you think your books are banned?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. So we have 4 books. This is Jacob's New Dress. It's about a little boy who wants to wear a dress. Okay, that's self-explanatory. That one's number 72 on the list of the 100 most banned books of the decade. And number 73 is Lolita. So this is Jacob's Room to Choose, which is about using the bathroom that's right for you, whatever your gender.
Also inspired by our son, because in 1st grade, when he had to use the whole bathroom with the big kids, he got harassed a lot, and we found out that other parents of kids who didn't look gender typical faced these same problems, so that was our response.
This one is Jacob's School Play, starring he, she, and they, which is an introduction to pronouns for kids and their adults.
I think adults tend to need it more.
And this one is Jacob's Missing Book, which is our response to book banning. And oddly enough, this one is not banned yet.
So, yes. Oh, actually, Lucas said it well. So you wrote a book about book banning, but it hasn't been banned yet.
Right. And the look on Lucas's face said it all.
Exactly. Like,
Doesn't.
what is this world?
What is this world?
Exactly. So we write our books so that kids who are different can feel seen, and so that kids who aren't different, or so that all kids can learn to be kind. This is the bottom line. But the real reason our books get banned? Because they are LGBTQ inclusive. Because the books most banned in this country are written by and or about LGBTQ people and people of color. There you go.
Absolutely. No, it's indicative of the regime.
Yes.
And the decisions that are being made by the people in power right now. And it is targeted. It's very definitely targeted. And they use the excuse of grooming. I'm sure they would assume that your books are grooming children. But as you mentioned, your own son had no influence. I mean, I grew up the same way that probably many people in this room grew up, with every song I listened to on the radio, every movie that I've ever watched, every book I ever read, everything on TV was all conditioning me, not to mention the social norms and pressures when people asking, do you have a girlfriend? You know, who's what girl do you have your eye on in class? Everything was heteronormative. I was groomed to be a straight man and marry a woman and have a child. That was just what you did.
Look, grooming is harder than it looks.
You know, and it doesn't work at all. Clearly, I mean, you know, it's just a ridiculous concept. All you're doing is recognizing that these children exist and that these people exist. They have, trans people have always existed. Queer people have always existed. And it's nothing new. And I think people are freaking out because as we have developed and evolved as human beings, we've discovered new ways to express who we are, to help people understand, and we have words now to describe who we are and to let people know that we can use. And people are threatened by it. They're threatened and they're afraid of it.
Yeah, and to your point, we put our son in like jeans and blue t-shirts with dinosaurs on them and gave him tractors to play with. Like we tried to groom him that way, and it didn't also.
Well, because you probably thought, well, he's a boy. This is what he's gonna want. Yeah.
It didn't occur to me, but he made different choices. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Well, the funny thing about our son is, despite the great love of all things pink and Disney princesses and dresses, is that he had this whole other set of interests too, like Lego and dinosaurs, and especially medieval weapons. So,
As you do.
Sarah actually took him to a Renaissance fair when he was that?
He was 5.
He was 5, and he wore a sundress, right? And he had his hair up and ribbons, and Sarah told him he was allowed a souvenir for the day.
Oh yes, he ran right up to the booth selling the wooden weapons, and he said, "1 battle axe, please."
So he got a lot of love at the Renaissance fair because there was this spunky girl in her sundress with her giant battle axe.
Yeah, if they knew that he was a boy in a dress, they might not have been so friendly toward it, because society loves spunky girls, right? But feminine boys, not so much.
But what's important is that you loved your son enough to let him wear that dress and get that battle axe. And you supported, you love your children unconditionally, which was a gift that I received from my mother and my family. I feel that I was very grateful for that. And I don't understand why some parents just can't love their kid.
Right, well, a lot of times their churches are telling them that they can't love their kid, and that's why this place makes such a difference in the world, right? So studies show that any amount of support for LGBTQ kids makes a huge difference in their health and mental health outcomes. So even if they're not supported at home, if a teacher or a pastor or a school nurse supports them, it makes a huge difference. Even if they live in a state that's very challenged and they don't get support in the community, if they get it at home, it makes a difference. So we had a teacher in kindergarten. Our son's teacher was very much like Sandra, but she didn't have any training in like how to deal with a kid who didn't conform to gender norms. She just was intuitive. So things came up in the classroom. The kids are saying, "You can't like pink. Pink is a girl color." She'd say, "Are there girl colors and boy colors, or are there just colors?" And one day the kids were arguing over hair. They told Sam he couldn't be a boy because he had long hair. And she responded by pulling out a photo of a little kid with short hair. And she said,
by the way, she had this fabulous mane of long
yes,
hair.
she had like glorious long hair and a pierced tongue. And so she pulls out this photo of a kid with short hair and she says, "Do you think this is a boy or a girl?" And all the kids, probably including our kids, said, "That's a boy." And she said, "Well, that was me when I was your age." So sometimes could girls have short hair? And sometimes could boys have long hair? And they're like, "Oh," And so these really simple lessons, they worked. And all the kids in Sam's class were like, "Oh, okay, that's a boy in a dress, whatever."
There's another kindergarten classroom exactly next door to Sam's, and that teacher was not doing the same lessons for her kids. So out on the playground, Sam would get questioned and harassed by the kids from that classroom, the same way the kids in his classroom used to harass him. So it was just a matter of this simple training that this teacher was doing. And from that we learned this really important lesson, which is that building a culture of kindness is work, but it's not hard work. It's just everyday work.
Absolutely. I have a question, and this is not an approved question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But how are the books selling, and are they selling better because they're banned?
It's a good question. We used to think that it was good for sales, right? So the first time we were banned was in 2017. Our first book, Jacob's New Dress, was banned in a school district in North Carolina. One school district, 3 schools, not a big ban, but it was super exciting, right? Because the New York Times called us, and they're like, "Did you know you were banned?" Now, the New York Times isn't going to call us. They can't keep up with the bans, right? But at the time, it was big enough news. So we're like, "Oh my God, the New York Times is calling us." We're getting all of this love from people in North Carolina who are horrified about their state, and they reached out to apologize to us. Like, it was a fun experience. And we're like,
sweet.
yeah, it was sweet. It was more good than bad. And we thought, well, maybe there will be a boost in sales. And maybe for a minute it was true. But what's been going on recently is so different, so comprehensive, I think that it has to be affecting sales for the worse.
Yeah, let me just give you some facts so you can get a sense of the scale of this. For the 2 decades before 2020, about 400 books were banned in the United States in a school year. In 2021, that jumped up to 2,500 books being banned. In 2022, it was 3,400 books being banned. And in 2023, over 10,000 books were banned in the United States in a school year. 10,000 from 400. So yeah, at this point, you know, if the state of Texas and the state of Florida don't want to buy your book and you're a publisher, that's a huge market that you've got to really consider.
Wow. That can't all be LGBTQ books, and there are also books about race, but what are they afraid of? Why do they want people to be so uninformed and so uneducated? I mean, reading was my life growing up. Like, I read literally every single one of the Laura Ingalls Wilder series, and I read every one of the Hardy Boys series. Like, I devoured books growing up. I loved reading. It's
And
just,
look what happened.
yeah, or that was a warning. No, but I mean, you know, like, what are they so, why are they so afraid of it? Why are they so afraid of knowledge and different ideas? What do you think? Probably, I'm sure everyone has an opinion here on that.
It's about political power, basically. So the majority of book censorship attempts come from organized political movements, either people like Ron DeSantis at the state level, or Moms for Liberty, who is a small group that's funded by very wealthy, very conservative extremists. And most book bans are not from parents. They're like 15% of book bans are suggested by parents. And these groups have a broader agenda of defunding libraries and public education. It's about scaring voters so they can gain power.
And they use a lot of different tactics that together create a climate of hostility. And that climate leads sometimes to lone actors doing things like calling in a bomb threat to a library, because that's very low effort, right? Just a phone call, but it creates chaos for the rest of us, right?
Yeah, we went to do a children's book event, kind of like this one, except with an art project, at the main branch of the Brooklyn Public Library a while back. And when we got there...
Wait, there were no drag queens there.
Whoa.
It was a much inferior event.
I'll get to that part of the story.
Oh, he did involve drag queens, yeah.
When we got there, there was an armed security guard assigned to us, which was an odd thing for us as children's book authors. It doesn't happen a lot. And we were curious about what was going on, and the librarians explained that the week before they did have a drag queen story hour featuring Jacob's new dress at one of the branch libraries, and someone had called in a bomb threat. At which point the librarians had to cancel the event and evacuate the library. So the librarians at the main branch were worried about our safety and their safety as we showed up to do our event.
So all of this, you know, organized hostility, right, from Moms for Liberty and other groups, it leads not just to outright bans, but to soft censorship. So if the library had been afraid to have us come at all, that would have been self-censorship. Self-censorship, doesn't it sound cute and cuddly? It's not cute or cuddly. So schools aren't going to invite an author to visit if they think someone's going to protest. We've had a number of author friends have their author visits canceled when one parent in the community protests. And did that person have an organic complaint, or did Moms for Liberty or a similar group reach them? You know, teachers aren't going to share a book in their classroom if it means they might lose their job. We just saw on the way here, actually, on social media, that in Utah, there's this nebulous law about, like, controversial topics, and no one knows what that means. And so teachers, to be safe, are pulling the books off their shelves so they don't violate some law that they don't even know when they're crossing lines. And you know, we understand if a library doesn't want to hold an event because there might be a bomb threat, right? That's their safety. Like, librarians shouldn't be afraid to go to work, right? It shouldn't require courage for the Brooklyn Public Library to have a pair of authors come, but...
Yeah, but they're doing it because the drag queens are dangerous and they're going to scare the kids. So let's call it a bomb threat and really, like, terrorize everybody.
Right. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. What you're talking about is pre-complying.
Exactly.
Which is something that I'm proud to say a lot of our community, a lot of people here in San Francisco are not doing. We are refusing to pre-comply, but there are a lot of, like, there's a lot of corporate sponsors who pull out of pride.
Yes.
We're struggling to find sponsorship for these events in advance of being told to do so.
Right, we have so much sympathy for these teachers and librarians. I mean, in the state of Florida, if you've got the wrong book in your classroom, it's a felony. That's up to 5 years in prison and up to $5,000 fine. And the rules around what you can discuss and what you can't discuss in a Florida classroom are very murky. So if I were a teacher, I wouldn't want to lose my job. And in Arkansas, I think it's 7 years in prison and a $10,000 fine. I mean, what teacher is going to stand up to that kind of pressure?
That is insane. So I want to hear about your visit to the Supreme Court. Tell us about that.
Thank you for asking. It's probably among the weirdest things that has ever happened to us. So our second book.
I'm looking at Roma thinking, but not the weirdest thing.
Yeah, definitely not the weirdest thing that's ever happened. So our second book, which is Jacob's Room to Choose, which maybe Ian will hold up, is part of a lawsuit that was filed in Montgomery County, Maryland, by some parents who are upset about their children seeing books like ours in their classroom, books that teach kindness and acceptance.
So Montgomery County is the biggest school district in Maryland. It's very diverse, very large. And about 3 years ago, they were looking at their books that were available to teachers to sort of read spontaneously. And they were like, hey, these books don't really represent all of the people who live in Montgomery County. So they went through this very thoughtful process with educators and librarians and parents involved in it to add 9 new books that had LGBTQ content.
It was a great process, actually, and some other school districts have done the same. We were in Danville yesterday, and they mentioned they had gone through this process. So they're actually adding books that reflect the diversity of their community. But just to be clear, that this case, Mahmoud v. Taylor, is a book ban by another name. So the conservatives have figured out that book bans are massively unpopular with the majority of Americans. And I mean, I've been saying Hitler made book burning unpopular, so they were doing book banning for a while, and now they're like, oh, nobody likes that, so we'll call it religious freedom. We'll call it parents' rights. So this is the new disguise that book banning is wearing, but it's the same thing. And we know that this particular court is very receptive to certain people's religious freedom and certain conservative parents' rights.
So this was heard on April 22nd, and we're waiting for the decision like this week or next week. But what the plaintiffs in Mahmoud argued was that not allowing families to opt their kids out of seeing books like ours infringes on their religious freedom. They claim that irreparable harm will come to their children from seeing the diversity of people and families represented in these picture books. And let's remember that the people and families represented in these picture books are the kids sitting in the classroom next to their kids.
The actual children in the district. And so if the court allows an opt-out based on not exposing children to certain content, the only way for schools to actually comply with a rule like that would be to ban spontaneous conversations about these things. So a lot of you probably know about Florida's Don't Say Gay rule. So this would make Mahmoud like a Don't Say Gay ban on steroids for the entire country. And if you think about the types of topics that people have objected to for religious reasons, they range from, they're not just LGBTQ stuff, I mean, we're talking science, right? History. We're talking women who work outside the home, as one of the progressive Supreme Court justices mentioned in the hearing, right? That like people object to some things that the rest of us think are okay, and it's basically going to, I mean, the fear is that it's going to affect public education, so for family that it will no longer function, which, if you read Project 2025, that's the goal.
That is the goal, yeah. It got weirder though. So Sarah and I were thinking, oh, once in a lifetime opportunity being banned by the Supreme Court, we have to go see this, right? So we tried to go into the court to get, we didn't win the ticket lottery, so we ended up helping organize the rally outside the court, which we went to. And our side was all, like you'd expect, happy rainbow-colored people singing and dancing and giving lectures. And the other side was interesting because they were all in navy blue. White shirts were allowed, but everything else was navy blue. And they stood there very somberly listening to big speakers where they had the justices speaking inside the court.
Which we tried to block out. We sometimes you could hear what was happening coming over, and I was like, thank God we did not get tickets. Because if I had to sit there and listen to 2.5 hours of Supreme Court justices lying about the content of picture books, I would have lost my mind.
Yeah, it was incredibly disheartening to hear Supreme Court justices say they read the book and then misconstrue the contents of it, two in particular. And at the same time, you know, you could listen to it on your phone because they broadcast it live. And then I'd look around and we'd be in this joyous crowd of people, and I could not feel uplifted by our side.
And look, we should clarify. We believe that people have the fundamental right to practice and express their faith.
Of course.
But not when it harms other people.
Well, people don't understand that your religion controls the way you behave, not the way I behave.
Thank you.
You know, that you subscribe to that religion, you believe in that by all means. And if it gives you hope and joy, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence are accused of mocking nuns and Christianity and religion and God all the time. You know, we don't sit around and we don't think about Catholics or anything else at all in our meetings. We think about how to serve the community, but you know, we would never tell anyone, if you find something that gives you hope and joy, that makes you, that you believe in, that is reaffirming for you, please, by all means, worship. Build a beautiful church and meet every Sunday and talk about it and rejoice and sing. I encourage that. You know, we would never tell anybody that you can't do that, but the people just they choose to interpret the scripture in ways to serve their own, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny. It's really disparaging. It's so sad sometimes. I don't get that feeling here, though. I feel like if I could go to church, I might come here.
Right.
I love it. I love the feeling of community and the sense of hope. And there's so much power in spirit, and you know, when people put their collective power together and send it out into the universe, and that's what you were doing on your side with the rainbow umbrellas. And that's what our community is always doing. Everywhere we go, we're collecting our joy and our energy and our power. We're like spreading it to the world. And I have faith in that. I refuse to believe that evil is going to win. And I want to thank you for writing these important books and taking that all the way to the Supreme Court. I can't wait to hear the decision. I'm sure that you will share it with us.
We will.
Do we have time to do some Q&A from the audience? I'm sure there are questions. Can we do that? Anybody have any questions? I know y'all have some questions. Here we go.
I just wanted to give some detail about the misrepresentation you're talking about. But could you be a little more specific about things that the Supreme Court justices said that were not?
Yes.
Unfortunately, justices. Unfortunately, we can't.
Yeah. So, Justice Alito and Justice Gorsuch seemed particularly interested in making things up about children's picture books, leading some of the authors to ask, did they understand them? These are books written for 4 and 5-year-olds. So Justice Alito was particularly enchanted with Uncle Bobby's Wedding, which is a book by Sarah Brandon. It's a very sweet book about a little girl named Chloe who has an uncle who she loves. And he tells Chloe that he's getting married. And Chloe's upset because if her uncle gets married, she might not have as much time with him. And it's a very sweet story. It goes on. It turns out 2 uncles are better than 1. Chloe's happy, all good. Justice Alito felt that the message of the book was that Chloe was upset that her uncles were getting gay married and didn't believe in gay marriage. And who was it who had to correct him?
Sonia Sotomayor.
Sonia Sotomayor had to clarify what the story was actually about, and his response was that, we can agree to disagree in book club. It's not really ambiguous. And then the other one, so Justice Gorsuch, that man has a dirty mind. So he was obsessed with this book called Pride Puppy, which is by, is it Robin Stevenson? It's a sweet book. It's an alphabet book for like 4-year-olds. It's really geared toward younger kids because it's an alphabet book. So like A is for apple, for example. And when I say lie, this is the way I'm using the term. He picked up Pride Puppy and said, so this book is about what? Bondage? Sex workers? And Amy Coney Barrett had to say, this is a book about a puppy who gets lost at a pride parade. So when Amy Coney Barrett is coming to your rescue, so did they technically lie? These men were under oath on this day. They probably technically did not lie, but they were doing like a Fox News style, throw out some words that make you think some things. And so, and the whole right-wing press has gone to town with these two books in particular. And so, like, if you Google Pride Puppy and say leather, you'll find all, all the stuff that they say is in the book. And what they did was, so for example, Z is for zipper in the book. And so the right-wing media has said, like, this is somehow for bondage. It's a kid who's got a sweatshirt with this. I got a zipper. Is this porn?
That's so kinky. We were in church, man. I would say.
Sorry to be so saucy. And there is leather in the book, which I think is where Gorsuch got to bondage, but there's a mom wearing a leather jacket, so that's dirty in his mind. So he has a dirty, dirty mind. But what that served to do, I mean, these are the people who are upholding the laws of our country at the highest possible level, right? And they're here spreading misinformation and lies and right-wing talking points and demeaning children's books. And it was profoundly disheartening. So that's what we mean by lies. That was a good question, thank you.
So, I had the pleasure of teaching your child. And he said some amazing things. Now, I always felt that the two of you were very different parents than a lot of parents that I saw. Not that other parents didn't love their children or didn't care for their children or show them how to live healthy and fulfilling lives, but there was something different about the two of you. And I recognized my own upbringing in that. And I just wanted to ask you, what within your own upbringing, or the coming together of the two of you, allowed you to see clearly who your son is and what he needed from you?
Thank you for seeing that in us and for asking that question. And I am going to let Ian take that, but I just want to say first, though, you are very kind, but we are not alone. So we were at a Pride celebration yesterday in Danville, and there were a bunch of people from PFLAG there, the leader of PFLAG, and a lot of people who run their organization. The mayor was there, the head of the school board, and all these parents. And they all are parents like this. They are all seeing, where's Heather? Heather was saying to me, like, the beauty is in seeing your child, right? I didn't think to put it that way, but that's great, right? These are all people who see their children and support and love their children. So we are far from alone. We know many parents who support and love their children. And it gets more common. But I think you saw stuff in your upbringing.
I have three brothers. We have a 10-year age range between us, and we're all very different. And at some point, I got old enough it occurred to me to wonder how my parents were raising us, that we ended up so different. And I asked my mom about it, and she said that she had taught school at the beginning of her career in New Orleans, and she learned that you can't teach a kid to be something they're not. All you can hope is to teach them to be the best version of what they are. And so she said she would, that's what she would do with us. She'd throw about a whole bunch of stuff in front of us and see what we liked and took to, and then she'd encourage that, and she wouldn't worry about the other stuff. So with Sam, I think a lot of parents would step up when they are confronted with a child who doesn't make sense, but insists on not making sense to the world. And you try and make sense of that. I don't think we saw him that clearly. I think we just supported him. That's all.
And you've done it so
Thank you.
and powerfully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes. Hi.
I have a question that's And sometimes they are used to ban books that are offensive, that do have terrible stories or do, you know, like, that have bad messages that are about hurting people. When you're speaking about these books and you're explaining that that's not the case with your book, how do you differentiate your stories from those offensive ones?
Very good question.
The question is, how do you defend and differentiate their books from actual books that are deservedly banned for the harm that they can cause?
Yeah, it's a good question, thank you. So you mentioned the Laura Ingalls Wilder books, which we also loved in our household. And one of those has been edited by the Laura Ingalls Wilder Foundation. And it's the one where Laura and her mom meet the Indians. And she said some pretty offensive things about Native American people. And I was actually disappointed when they edited that book, because I thought what they should have done is write a foreword talking about how this book uses offensive language, and here's why. And here's why we didn't change it, because we want you to see that this is how people thought, but look, this is how we think now. And to me, I think that teaches something versus just kind of whitewashing the past, because it, like, failing to admit that we were racist doesn't help us not be racist, is my sense. We've had some weird I mean, we get a lot of trolls on the internet. There was one who was like arguing with me about book banning and said something about, well, do you think they should ban Mein Kampf? And I'm like, well, Germany banned it, I think for good reason. Like, that's maybe one case where they should, yes, ban a book. But here, I don't think we should ban it. I think we should be teaching kids, once they're at the appropriate age, this is what this man thought, and this is what he did. And this is how, oh my God, it's influenced our current political situation. But I think we need to talk about these things, otherwise we just keep repeating our problems. As far as, we don't usually say, defend against these claims, right? I don't say, no, this book isn't porn, because I don't think that's a great, defense.
So we talk about what our books are about instead.
Yeah.
And that's because otherwise we're in a losing argument to begin with, defending against something that's not true.
Yeah, so our books most simply are about kindness and inclusion. And I think that that's why the right wing has all this other language, because coming out against kindness and inclusion, it's not a great look, right? So they have to lie. They have to say, this book is indoctrination, this book is porn, these people are child abusers. So we try not to use their language. We try not to, I never want to be in a situation where I'm like, I'm not a child abuser. I mean, it's not a good position to be in. But to just say over and over, we come from a place of kindness. We believe all children deserve to see themselves reflected in books. We believe that books can and do help children learn to be kind to each other.
Any other questions? Yes.
Do you have any books in the works following this?
Good question.
We do. A while back, we had decided that writing about children and gender wasn't controversial enough, so we would write about children and religion. And we're working on that one. And that got preempted by the book about book banning, because that sort of became more urgent. But it's curious that that ended up being a Supreme Court argument, that it's about religion. So I feel like we're a little ahead of the curve there.
Now it's going to look like we're responding to the court case.
Why not? Did you have another hand there?
I was going to ask the same question.
Oh, okay.
What are your favorite books?
I think Antango Makes Three might be my favorite picture book. What's yours?
That's a really hard question. I have to say, The Cat in the Hat is so brilliant, and as part of, yes, it's so terrifying. And as part of learning how to write children's books, I ended up analyzing it page by page, image by image, word by word. I had this huge chart up on my wall to figure out how he does that, how he makes these terrifying books that's full of unhappy images. And once I figured out the secret behind it, I was like, oh my God, this is genius. And so it's maybe not my favorite, but it's among them for sure.
I have to go back and reread that. Confederacy of Dunces. I love that book. I've read it 3 times. I've laughed out loud every time I read it. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity, you should check it out. Any other questions? Yes.
Sorry, just listening to this ruling that might be coming down the pipes, which bans spontaneous discussion in public schools. My son is going to be starting kindergarten this fall, and I just wanted to ask if you guys have any further information about how parents can better inform themselves so that, you know, he's going to be going into public school here in San Francisco. I don't know how a ruling like that would affect us, like in this particular city, but I just want to ask if you have any resources that parents might be able to take a look at so that we can kind of like prepare ourselves. I mean, besides like a library, a personal library that's filled with stories like yours. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So the question is, what can parents do to prepare themselves for the effects of this decision? So fortunately in San Francisco, we're not likely to feel a whole host of effects, although there is the fact of, if these books are banned, like our books are banned in more than half the states, so if enough of these books are banned in enough states, they're just not going to be available for anyone to purchase, because they will fall out of production. But I think we are, thank God, at this point, relatively safe here. So on our website is a page called Fight Book Bans, and it has information on the kinds of organizations that we can all support, whether you have money or time or want to be educated. You can look into what we can do to stop the flow of misinformation and disinformation, and actually stand up for free speech, which is largely what all this is about. Anything you'd add?
No. And if you want to get books that are banned in the hands of people who really need them, talk to Becca, who can make sure that happens. Yes, hi.
Good afternoon. I want to thank you for standing on principle and truth of yourself.
Thank you. Well, we are so honored to be with you here today. Thank you, Reverend Floyd, for bringing us in. Thank you, Susie, for making the connection. Thank you, Sister Roma. How lucky are we to have Roma here?
You are always welcome.
That's right.
Thank you.
So Sister Roma already said she's joining, so you'll get a pledge card by the end of the night. Yeah. All right. Which is one thing I want to say a big thank you to our guests. We have a little Calvary swag here for Sarah and Eden.
Thank you.
And it includes a t-shirt, a Calvary Yeti, oops, I'm dragging things, and a copy of my current favorite book, which I want to recommend to everyone, On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder.
And his main message is what Roma was saying.
Yeah.
Don't obey in advance.
Do not obey in advance. I want to, and because this is a church gathering, we're going to have a brief prayer. All right, so that's what we do. Here we go. We're going to pray, and it's all right if there's noise. Loving God of the universe, we thank you for people who stand on principle. We thank you that we are created in diversity, and that in that diversity is our strength. Help us to honor diversity wherever we see it. Help us to see you looking back from the eyes of every person we meet. We pray especially for the children and all of the LGBTQ people in this country who can no longer call the suicide line. We pray for all of the people in this country who are consumed with hate, and we ask you to melt our hearts and let us see you pouring out from the heart of another. In your many loving names, amen. Amen. There's a place over, you can do a little step and repeat over here in front of this beautiful banner. There are books for sale. There's an article about gender fluidity in the Bible. And here is Becca with Books Not Banned. Thank you, thank you, thank you.